is the TAC HR presentation. So at this time, I believe we're going to move down and do the HR presentation. We have some employees here that are here for that presentation, and then if we do that, then they can go back to work a little quicker than if we wait until the workshop. That's agreeable with everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
It'll take me a minute just to set up.
That's fine.
It's going to be you again, Commissioner, so I want to scoot over.
Want to move?
Just a little bit, if you don't mind.
We don't slide around.
So you can see how fast
I guess we need to shut the blinds so we can see.
Probably.
That's Andy Park's job. Always open. Don't get up.
With a lot going?
Right behind you.
Bam.
There you
All
go.
right, there we go. Okay.
Aaron, y'all might want to move over on the other side of the desk. Or table.
Chair over. There you go. You're fine, you saw it out there. No one here, I promise you.
There's the Darby.
Yeah, I need this.
Okay, can everyone see that? Ugh. Is that better? Okay. Good morning. My name is Haley Beaver. I am with the Texas Association of Counties. I am your HR consultant for the Northeast region. Prior to joining TAC, I was an HR director in a county, and then prior to my county experience, I was an HR director at AT&T. So, a disclaimer, if you've ever attended a TAC training before, you know that this is going to be subject matter expertise and not legal advice. If you need legal advice, seek out a competent attorney. We're going to be talking about different types of difficult behavior that we may experience. We're going to talk about how to develop some effective strategies for working with those difficult people, and then we'll discuss your role as a supervisor in managing difficult employees and documentation and termination. So starting off strong, we will talk about what an actual difficult person is, right? We have our examples down below at the bottom of the screen, but basically we're those ones that have the aggression. They're either hostile, violent behavior towards others. They always want to confront someone. We have the passive aggressive and directly expressing negative feelings instead of openly addressing them, so sly comments under their breath, right? Negativity, right? The negative Nancy's or negative Nellies. They always have negative feelings. Instead of addressing them, they're just going to be negative. And of course, manipulation. Basically, there's someone that's clever in the act of manipulation. They try to manipulate you as a supervisor to think basically that they are right, you're wrong type situation. So causes of difficult behavior that we experience in the workplace could be stress related, right? Maybe they're insecurity, maybe they do not know how to do the job they were hired to do, and now they're kind of scared to ask for more advice, more training. They do not have good communication skills, whether they be verbally or written. And then of course the difference in personalities. So, Some active listening skills that we want to do is, through our effective communication, is get our employees talking to us. When we're talking with or when we're trying to work with difficult employees, asking those open-ended questions is key. It gets them talking. Through their verbal communication, we're able to find out a little bit more about them. Basically, it helps you build that rapport and diffuse potential contentious situations. Nonverbal would be cues such as body language, the tone of voice, and facial expressions. Y'all, this one gets me in trouble. My nonverbal communication gets me in trouble because my face says it all before I even open my mouth. And so my mom used to tell me when I was younger, fix your face, right? And I just knew exactly what she meant by that because I was probably looking a little crazy and it wasn't the time or place to have that face, right? So our body language and how we talk, the tone of voice can come off as rude when we don't even mean to. So characteristics of our difficult people are our eye rollers, right? You tell them to do something, they immediately roll their eyes and go, okay, and walk away. The drawer slammer in our county tax offices, if they're slamming the drawers when they are doing the payment because you told them they did something wrong, or clearly just walking out of your office because they're angry. When we talk about attendance, we have to be aware of FMLA. So yes, attendance problems are going to be job performance issues, right? Because if they're not here, that's a job performance issue. They're not coming to work. But we also have to be on the other flip side, we have to be aware of the situation. So is it a medical reason as to why they are not coming to work? Could it be FMLA? And under federal law, we are required to offer an employee FMLA if there is a need. They might be angry, they might be whiners. Our performance problems, the expectation, skills, or conflicts, if that is an issue, let's address it, right? So when we talk about the performance problems, our expectations and skills, maybe they need additional training. Maybe they just don't understand how you trained them because that's not the way they learn. For instance, I'm the type of person that I can see it done one time and then I can pick it up. But my husband, you have to give him a list of steps to do, and he has to memorize his steps. I can watch you do it, he has to, actually have it written down for him. So that's where we differ, right? And so not everyone learns or talks or speaks like you, so make sure that if you are training someone and they're not picking it up, you try and reroute our training to figure it out. And of course our performance problems, we kind of talked about that, the health. Maybe there's a family issue going on. Could it be related to mental health? Do we need to explore FMLA? Could we possibly do some type of job accommodation? Is there a child care issue? What's going on? How do we have a disruption in the family life that could relate back to the workplace, right? Let's figure that out. We want to have good work-life balance. So we want to make sure that if something is going on and it's causing a bad performance, that we're addressing it any way we can through any of our FMLA, ADAs, anything along those lines. So characteristics continued, right? We have that entitled attitude. They're typically going to be bullies. They gossip a lot. They like to play victim. It's not my fault. Or the ones that are overly sensitive, that you say one thing to them and they start crying, right? Those are all difficult characteristics of difficult employees. So be mindful of that and how we handle and talk to people. Remember, everyone needs to be handled differently in a sense. If they're overly sensitive, address it differently than you would if someone who is thick skin, right? That's how we need to address our employees. Scenario, we'll go over a quick scenario. You're a supervisor in a clerk's office, and one of your employees, John, has been consistently causing issues with customers. He's been rude, unresponsive, and fails to meet customer expectations. It's time to address the issue and find a resolution that improves John's behavior and ensures customer satisfaction. If you were the supervisor, what would you do, or what action would you take?
Counsel with him. first thing I do is counsel with them.
There you go. Good job, Commissioner.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then what would you do after you counsel with
I
them?
give them a first level reminder. You know what
Oh,
that means?
you've been paying attention to the HR training.
And then I give them a second level reminder. Then I give them a decision if I can leave.
There we
Then
go.
after I sit down and talk to them, I terminate them.
There we go. Please follow Commissioner's example. Because he just summed up, okay. He just summed up the whole presentation for us, right? Okay.
I have a question for you.
That's why you get money in part-time.
Good.
I have a question for you.
Is there?
Shouldn't every county employee have a job description?
Absolutely.
How many in here's got job descriptions? That's actually got one. You've got one, or we've got. Oh, your office does, Brian?
Oh.
Okay. So we do have people that don't have job descriptions.
Okay, so I'll touch on that real fast. Job descriptions are not required by law. However, every law that we talk about in our employment law presentation refers back to a job description. How do you discipline an employee without a job description, right? Plain and simple. How do you tell a physician what your employee does in order to get them to be released to come back to work for workers' comp, ADA accommodations, FMLA, anything along those lines? If we do not have a solid job description, those are just some examples. If we don't have a solid job description, we are then at the liberty of the employee telling the physician what they do for work. And I don't know about you, not all employees are honest, and they may inflate their job duties to stay out longer. So if we provide as a county, if we provide a job description, it is better suited for everyone. Additionally, some of the claims that have come through the TAC risk pool recently were job-related performance issues that didn't have clear job descriptions. And when we were doing the mediation with the EEOC, this gentleman the mediator was out of New Orleans, and we were over the phone, video call, and the county presented a job description that had 15 to 20 essential duties. And you know what that EEOC mediator said? That employee's so confused, they don't know what their job is. Therefore, their recommendation is that we have 5 to 6 key essential functions, and then we add that caveat statement at the bottom, other duties as assigned. That way it's clear and concise.
Other
Other duties as assigned.
As the sun.
As assigned. So, that is what we should be doing with job descriptions.
In that job description, can you put that someone must be physically able to do?
We have to be very careful of our wording because of the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act. So we have to be very careful that we are not discriminating against someone in the pre-employment process, because if we put that on a job description, the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act begins in the hiring process. So we have to be mindful of that. We don't want anybody in the whole county can sue you, even if they weren't an employee, because of what your job description says.
But you could put in your application that
This
person must be able to lift 40
Yes.
pounds. Or
You can put must be able to lift 40 pounds, but it's your wording, Commissioner. We'll have to reword must be, instead of must be capable, must be able, just different things like that. It's our wording we have to.
40 pounds, 1,000 times a day.
Yes.
whatever.
80% of the day. They want to see it in a
So
percentage,
you
how much time.
can do that.
Yes, you can do that. We just have to be very careful with our wording, not to discriminate. Any other questions on job description? Okay. Awesome. So tips and strategies. We want to use language and a tone that calms to discuss the difficult behavior. Be direct, right? So when we're being direct, we want to use the example of, I've noticed you've been late to work in the past few days. What can be changed to help you get here on time? Is this a you problem, or is this something new that we need to address, right? So maybe it was the fact that dad usually takes, this would be my issue in my house. Dad usually takes the kids to school Monday through Friday. Mom is on the road traveling all the time. And maybe I had to take the kids one time, and then I was late to work that same day because I had to take the kids, and I wasn't aware of the traffic that I have to go through for drop-off time, right? So a simple accommodation for that for a supervisor would be, hey, for the next 2 or 3 days, work on your timing, figure out when you need to leave, but we expect you next week on Monday to be back reporting to work at 8 o'clock on time. So figure it out for the next 2 or 3 days. You're more than welcome to come in 8:15, 8:30. However, next week, you need to be here on time. You need to figure it out. That's as simple as an accommodation needs to be. And then avoid criticizing or judging. So don't use the blame game. The biggest thing that I would tell my elected officials when I was an HR director is separate your facts from your emotions, right? Write the disciplinary statement as if you were completely detached from the situation. My favorite thing to do as a supervisor would be to write out my disciplinary statement, take it to another equal level supervisor, so another director or commissioner, tell them nothing that was going on in my office, right? Have them read that disciplinary statement and see if they can understand why I'm disciplining someone. If they can't, think about it this way. If I present that in court to a jury of my employees' peers, are they going to understand the disciplinary reason, right? So if another supervisor doesn't understand, how is the jury of your peers going to understand? We want to stay focused on the subject at hand. So when we're in those disciplinary hearings, stay focused on the disciplinary hearing. We're not discussing other issues. Be firm and use statements, right? You missed 3 important deadlines. Please explain why this is happening. Get them talking. Be prepared to negotiate and listen, right? They may bring up an issue that you were unaware of. Let's talk about it. Let's talk through that and listen. State how you can help the employee. Remember, disciplinary statements are to salvage the employees. They are not to get rid of or punish or anything like that. We want to salvage our employees. I don't know about you, but we are currently hiring at TAC for 3 positions, and it has been a nightmare trying to. What are they? Are you coming to visit us? It's a risk manager. If you all know my coworker, Todd Kiesel, who is our property insurance guy. He passed away in February of this year, and we still have not been able to fill those extremely large shoes. So we are working on filling that position, our cybersecurity position, and there's another, the safety guy position. So that is also open as well. But y'all, it's been a process. So we want to make sure that we salvage our employees, right? Because the hiring pool, excuse my language, has urine in it right now. It's not a fun place to be going dipping in, right? So just be mindful of that. You always want to acknowledge our small improvements along the way. If someone is doing something good, even if they are on a PIP, which is we call a performance improvement plan, and they have done something good, acknowledge those small little steps of improvement. It will do wonders, it will work wonders for that employee's morale, right? What we don't want to do is put that negative spin on everything, allow one employee to erode the entire office climate. I can't tell you how bad it is when you walk into a county office and you have one employee who is just negative all the time, or always gossiping. You can cut the tension in the air with a knife, right? Be mindful of that. We want to make sure that we don't allow our employees to create hostile work environments. We never, never, never want to ignore policies and rules, right? They're there for a reason. They are there to protect the county. They are there to protect you as a supervisor. Because if you didn't know, not only could you be named liable in a lawsuit with the county, they can also personally, you can also become personally liable as well in a lawsuit. So we never want to allow arguments or unproductive behavior, never gossip, never make people look bad in public. If you need to reprimand someone, pull them aside, talk to them. Praise in public, reprimand in private. What we don't want to do is ignore our problem employees. If they are a problem, let's address it. I think I talked about it in just a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and say it now. Texas is an at-will state. You are allowed to terminate someone for any reason, at any time, with or without warning, as long as it is not a legal reason, right? However, don't rely on at-will, because there comes a liability with every single at-will claim case that we look at. So if they are a problem employee and they are performance issue related, we know they're just not going to work out, tell them that, right? I do not believe you're capable of doing this job. Give them the reasons, give them the documentation as to why, right? Don't just rely on at-will, because 100% of the time, when that terminated employee goes to unemployment, files for unemployment, they are going to get unemployment, because you basically said as a supervisor, your services are no longer needed. It was no fault of your own, you just no longer needed. I'm at-willing you. And they just raised the actual price, the weekly price that an employee gets on unemployment. Don't know that exact price off the top of my head, but I do know if an employee takes the full 26 weeks of employment, it costs the county $15,002 per person. So think about that.
It was 11,000 something.
Yes, now it's 15,002. So be mindful of that. Just because you at-will them, it's not always cheaper. Okay. Now there are some cases where it's like, great, $15,000, I can get rid of them. Great. And I've had some of those. I've actually dealt with some of those, and I've done it at will just to get rid of someone and have the county pay the $15,000.
Sometimes it's worth it.
Sometimes it is. It's very much worth it sometimes. But don't rely on it every time. Okay. We want to learn techniques to head off our difficult behaviors, so focus on the good behaviors versus the negative. Ask those open-ended questions, let them talk. Don't try to label employees as difficult because they made a complaint, right? It may be a valid complaint that does need to be investigated. Focus on work, don't talk about personal criticism. So we'll do a little multiple choice real fast. When encountering a difficult person, which of the following strategies is most effective in de-escalating the situation? A, reacting with anger and matching their hostility. B, ignoring their behavior and avoiding confrontation. C, actively listening and showing empathy. And D, engaging in a power struggle to assert dominance. A. A is normal. A is what we would like to do, but the correct answer is C. Right? So, we talked about this a while ago. I skipped ahead a little bit in my presentation, but primary goal is to salvage the employee, not punish, of discipline. So before you act, make sure you've given employees a fair hearing. We want to make sure that we've investigated or followed up where necessary. When we are investigating, we have to be mindful of the potential legal ramifications, right? So was it harassment, discrimination? Is there a DOL claim that could possibly come out of this? So a wage, an hour related complaint. Determine if you're being too difficult or unfair. Would you do this to your favorite employee, right? It's my favorite question to ask myself. If my favorite employee or my most top producing employee were to do this same action as this low producing employee, just barely getting by the minimum, would I have the same reaction? Would I discipline the same? The answer for me would be yes, right? So you have to be mindful of that. Evaluation, so evaluate your policies and your procedures from all perspectives, right? And advise the employee on the seriousness of the issue. The biggest thing is when we are telling employees that they are being disciplined, they must know that their job is in jeopardy, right? Because if they do not know that their job is in jeopardy, the EEOC mitigators or the defending attorney on the other side is going to go, well, they had no idea they were even in trouble. You never told them that their job was in jeopardy. And so we want to make sure that they know the seriousness of the issue. That is another reason why, even if it's just a counseling notice, a verbal notice, you follow it up with an email, right? That is your first line of your affirmative defense, is what we call it. So you just follow it up with an email. Hey, we had a conversation today. This is what I want to see happen. This is my expectation. This is how I want to see it improve, right? And then if you go on and move forward to like a written warning, the employees must sign those, okay? They must sign those. A lot of times I get the question, well, what if they refuse to sign them, right? So, if they refuse to sign, I have one or two ways. My first one is my sunshine and rainbow way. It's a little bit nicer than the other one. Ask them to flip the document over and write why they disagree with the discipline documentation, right? That is then their signature, quote unquote, as to them seeing the document. They cannot, in a court of law, deny never seen the document if we flip it over and say, well, this is why you don't agree with it, right? The other way is a little bit more harsh. You add a statement on the disciplinary statement that says, failure to sign this document will be viewed as insubordination and cause your immediate termination. If they still do not sign the document, you can say, great, you're insubordinate, there's the door, goodbye, right? So there's our one or two ways they have to always sign that document.
I thought we were an at-will employer, and we could tell them it was fun at any time.
We can, but remember, we don't want to rely on that, right? Because it comes with a cost.
It's
So-
nice to show the reasons.
You better
Yes.
have plenty of documentation if you do.
Yes, please do. Okay?
I got blood on me.
Okay, so quickly the different types of discipline. We have our preventative. This is done without the employee's knowledge. When we talk about preventative, I'm getting ahead of myself. Preventative, corrective, and punitive, right? So corrective is a behavior, before performance has occurred, and then punitive after behavior, the job is in jeopardy. So preventative starts with new employee orientations. It is so important for a new employee coming on to your county to have a good first day, a good first impression, right? There's nothing worse than, this happened to me a lot as an HR director. They would come to the HR office and one of my departments hadn't notified me that they had even hired anyone. It was their first day, so then I had to scramble, get my new hire packet ready, and then change what I was doing to sit down and do new hire orientation. So please communicate with your HR, with your treasurer's office, whoever does your new employee orientation, to make sure that person has a good first day, right? Constructive feedback, and then leading by example, or our preventative. Our corrective is our verbal, those PIPs, performance improvement plans. On PIPs, you can set a probationary period. I've seen 30, 60, 90. And we even had one in my county where I was the HR director that we put in a PIP for 180 days. Because we were in this vicious cycle with her that she would do the PIP and be good for 60 days. And then all of a sudden we come back, she's off the PIP, and we're now falling back into our old ways, right? And so what we did is we put her on a PIP for 180 days, and hers was an attendance problem. She was a part-time employee that worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she consistently called out every Monday almost. Every Monday. She worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday. She wanted to call out every Monday during football season. So football games are on Sunday, and she would call out on Monday, right? And so we finally put her on a performance improvement plan. We documented the pattern of absences. We used that as our documentation, put her on the performance improvement plan for 180 days. Y'all, she lasted 62. And at the 62nd day, my county judge ended up terminating her with my help, but he did terminate her. Because a performance improvement plan isn't a contract of employment. It's not a contract of employment. A lot of people get that confused. When they're put on a probationary period, they think, oh, I got 60 days. They cannot terminate me at all within that 60 days. And that's not the case. We need to make sure that if we use a PIP, that we have the language can be terminated at any time. Okay, so it doesn't create a contract of employment. And of course, the last one is written warning for misconduct. Or punitive. This occurs after behavior or action occurs. Must be written, must be a formal consultation with the employee, provide provable facts. Remember, separating our facts from our emotions. No personal biases, opinions, or feelings. Must have a plan of correction. The employee must know that their job is in jeopardy. So, we want to have the specifics in there. Argues, argues with coworkers, makes inappropriate jokes. What we want to avoid is subjective phrases, right? We want to not use maintain a positive attitude and be a team player, right? Those are subjective. Basically what I think a team player, you could probably think is not a team player, right? Maintaining a positive attitude, we could probably have different viewpoints on what a positive attitude could be. So just be mindful of that. No personal feelings, opinions, emotions. Write it as if you're detached. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Focusing on the quality of work, right? So the behavior that impacts the work, the conduct, the policies, the attendance, and availability. Okay, so we got to make sure that if there is an issue with any one of those, and we've broken a policy, print just that page of the policy out. Present it to the employee as to what policy they broke during the disciplinary hearing. Let them know, sign off on it so they understand that, one, they acknowledge the policy when they started, right? So we have that first affirmative defense in their personnel folder already. Two, if we ever make a policy change in Commissioner's Court, we need to get updated personnel acknowledgements. Because if we don't have those and they've only signed the personnel acknowledgement 20 years ago when they very first started, then that's their defense to say, I didn't know there was a policy change. I don't listen to Commissioner's Court every Wednesday, or whenever Commissioner's Court is, right? So we have to make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's for everything. Another big one is to never attack character or psychological makeup. In the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act, the amendment in 2008 added a section called regarded as. And this is huge, okay? Because if you say that employee is crazy, you just regard it to them as having a disability. They can then turn around and use that against you to file for an accommodation, even if there is no medical documentation to support them being quote-unquote crazy. So be mindful of making those little comments. Remember, we're maintaining at will. We don't want to surrender to it in our words or policies. We want to always prohibit and investigate claims of harassment and discrimination. If someone comes up to you with harassment or discrimination claims, investigate them, right? That's a huge, huge, huge thing. And remember, whatever the last action you take for termination is what you must defend in unemployment or EEOC. It doesn't matter. Unemployment does not care. The EEOC does not care. If an employee punched another employee 6 months ago, got to keep his job, but you terminated them for being late for car trouble, you are going to lose unemployment for that. Okay? Because the last action was outside the employee's control. They can't control that they had a flat tire and were late to work, and you terminated them for that. The unemployment is going to go, they get unemployment for that. It doesn't matter. I've been in this situation where the employee did punch another employee. He's a juvenile detention officer. And their chief said, I'm not going to terminate him because we're in the business of giving second chances. So I want to give this employee a second chance also. And outside my better judgment, I let he's the department head, he said, I'm not doing it, and I didn't push, and we didn't terminate. And a couple months later, he did fire him for turning his report in late. Some monthly report, he turned it in a day late, they terminated him. When we were in unemployment, the unemployment officer did everything but laugh when the employee first words out of his mouth were, well, 3 months ago, I got to punch another employee in the face, cause them to have surgery, and I didn't get terminated. But you're going to terminate me for a report that's 1 day late. So remember, they don't care what happened in the past. They want whatever last action you use. The paper trail, right? This is what we call your affirmative defense. If it is not in writing, it did not happen. Okay, there's a statute of limitations on everything. So the Health and Commission of Texas, it is going to be 300 days. The EEOC, it's going to be 180 days. And then for employment law litigation, it's 2 years. So if you have some information that's not written down, it is going to be very hard to remember what happened January 8th of 2022 if we're, trying to figure out what happened that day, and that's the day that we're using. So if you have documentation, it is super, super important that it is written. If you do performance evaluations, make sure they're fair and honest. Don't just give everyone the highest rating because you want to make sure they get a raise from the commissioner's court, right? That doesn't work that way. Those don't work that way. Because when we have the Public Information Act, right, the PIA, and someone requests information out of a personnel folder and you've recently terminated someone and for bad performance, but their job evaluation 2 months ago was perfect, it's going to look really negative on the county. So make sure you're giving honest and fair performance evaluations. Make sure we're giving fair notice for the need to improve, clearly stating what is wrong and how to improve on it, your consistency in words, rating, and actions across the board for all employees, using honesty, and then of course, beware of those protected statuses that we're not retaliating just because they are a protected class. So that's your Title VII of 1964, your race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Also age discrimination as well. If they're over the age of 40, it could be considered age discrimination as well. So
Over 40?
over 40.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Right? So, I once had he was a county attorney employee, he was an attorney and an assistant attorney, and I had finally convinced my commissioner's court to hire me an assistant as the HR director. I had 455 employees by myself, and I just needed an assistant. And I finally got it approved after 4 years of asking. They finally approved it, and she's day 2 of her job. And Mr. Joe, as I talk about him, but Mr. Joe, he comes in, and this was his rhetoric every single time we talked was, "Good morning, Miss Haley. You know I'm 124 years old, and I can't get behind your HR antics." Little backstory, I was the first inaugural HR director ever for that county. It had been handled by the treasurer's office previously. And so it was kind of like the new HR director walked in and changed everything, right? So he was like, "I ain't doing it, can't get behind you," but he was cordial with it. Well, the new employee, my assistant, just trying to insert herself in the conversation and feel included, right? She's like, "Well, Mr. Joe, when are you going to retire?" And he's an attorney, and so what did he do? He goes, "Young lady, that's age discrimination, and I will not stand for it." Well, his little nickname in the courthouse was the Cloud, because he was always seen floating around the courthouse, never really sitting at his desk. So we talked, she's like tears almost, because he just walks away. And I'm like, "I promise this is a learning experience for Mr. Joe. When he finally makes it back to his desk, he's going to call you and say, 'This is why, blah, blah, blah,' and go through the whole spiel with you." And so, sure enough, 2 hours later, when he finally made it back to his desk, he calls and he tells her, "That was just a learning experience. This is how it could be taken. Just be aware that you're implying that I am of retirement age," right? So be mindful of that for age discrimination. So, as a supervisor, you should have these following qualities, right? Managing your own emotions, remain in control, so bite your tongue, don't say what you really want to say. I know it's there in our heads, right? Another big thing is don't put it in writing. Assess the situation, what role do you actually play? Apologize if necessary. I know that is really hard to do, but do it if you need to. And decide what can be done. So take a step back, determine what is causing the negative action or behavior, and then decide how you can move forward. What we want to see in a supervisor is to gain respect of your department. We want to continue to be motivated, action-oriented, approachable, a good listener, and gives clear directions. They have good, effective communication. Someone that recognizes and rewards our employees. They set goals and objectives. Truly does have that open door policy. Wisely uses teachable moments. I reported to the entire Commissioner's Court as the HR director. But the only one I really dealt with was my county judge. We were in the same building. And so he was an old rancher, so he was a road hand. And then he was a commissioner for 26 years. And now he's on his second term as county judge. And he was a rancher, still is a rancher. And every time, I swear, I got to the point where I was like, all right, what's my heifer lesson? Because every time he would have something to teach me on, right, a teachable moment, he would use it and relate it to working cattle, right? And I never got it. I never understand how he could relate everything to working with cattle, but that man could relate anything and everything to working with cattle. And so I just was like, all right, what's my heifer lesson? What do you have for me today, right? And so still to this day, he'll text me, he's like, I got a heifer lesson for you. I know you weren't here, but this is what we went through today. Gosh, okay, thank you. So, what we want to do is avoid these qualities, right? We want to avoid being a rumor mill. We want to avoid tattling and sucking up to our upper management, right? Failing to communicate clearly. That's a big problem as a supervisor. If you are speaking too loudly, if you're constantly yelling, rude, mean, we walk a very thin line before we cross over into it being harassment and discrimination. So our words are important, what we say, how we say it are important. Using discipline inappropriately, we want to make sure we never do that. So create a positive work environment, right? A great work environment goes a long way. You are with your coworkers more than you are with your family, right? So it starts from day one. We want to make sure that we recognize performance problems early and deal with them immediately if there's an issue. Praise often and think about it. Could it be you? Could you have had a bad morning this morning and now you're kind of just in a blah attitude and you're having a bad day? Could it be you in their shoes? Any questions for me? My contact information is up top. I did have blonde hair when I started, don't anymore. But that's my cell phone number. It is easiest to text me if you need me, because like you see, I'm mostly doing this in counties. I have 65 counties in the red that I service. So you're more than welcome as a supervisor to text me or email me with any questions you may have if Jeannie is not available. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We're going to take about 5 minutes break.